Anytime that Stanford comes out with a study around AI, you know that Connor and I are going to be talking about it. And we have a really fascinating one today where essentially Stanford went and did a study looking at the shift in what jobs were being replaced or done by AI. What's interesting is basically that the researchers there, they were able to actually look at the data around basically what people are calling kind of like early warnings on what jobs AI is doing. We could look at payroll records from millions of workers. And by doing this, they were able to show basically what's happening with overall employment and some areas that AI is quietly reshaping basically who gets hired and what they're doing. So this is a fascinating study. I know, Connor, you've been posting this, talking about this on LinkedIn. It's getting a ton of traction. I'm seeing this quoted all over the place. But basically from this study, what was the most interesting or kind of shocking points for you?
Yeah, I'd say that this is an interesting one because a lot of these studies are usually all about, hey, so where do we think AI is going to replace workers? Or it's a little bit theoretical about, oh, it's going to replace the bottom rung of the career ladder and all that sort of stuff, right? And that's interesting. I think it's true, all that sort of stuff, but it's very hard to tell usually, Jaden, because as you and I know, most of this is just driven by the economy. So anybody can make any data look like how they want, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Microsoft cuts, 5,000 jobs, everybody's like, "Oh, it's AI." It's probably not. Now there's usually some truth to the fact that maybe they're reallocating capital or something like that, but not that AI is taking jobs. And I'll just also say that I have a huge sample size here, right? Like as I'm on the road constantly, just like sort of like working with a lot of organizations, and the critical thing is that I don't see this happening in any organization that I'm working with. I see them trying this out and figuring it out to sort of see what it could do. But the interesting thing about this study, and this was called Canaries in the Coal Mine, that was kind of the name of the study, about like sort of early indicators on what could happen or what is happening. But the cool thing about this study is that they took payroll data instead of sort of, any kind of other economic data from ADP, which is the big payroll platform. And it covered millions of workers, right, through July 2025. So it's pretty recent. It feels real time. And again, most of these previous studies were just theoretical, right? It's sort of like, and this shows, because here's the other thing, government data, which is where a lot of people pull this from, it's just so slow. Survey data, so slow. It's just too small to catch those, or too minor to catch those patterns. So what they're finding here, to get into the meat of this, is really interesting. So they found that workers age 22 to age 25 in what they call AI exposed jobs, right? So software, customer service, things like that, saw a 13% employment decline since late 2022. And they kind of mapped it to when ChatGPT was released. And in that same time, workers 35 and above in the same companies with the same job types grew 6 to 9%. So it's not exactly, in as much as you can ever track data, this seems like a pretty good track, right? And also employment is falling where AI automates tasks, but stays stable where AI automates or augments human work, right? So it's not that, and here's the really big takeaway, Jaden, and we can kind of go into this, and would love your thoughts about like what we've seen in the market and everything else. It's so first of all, we can see, I want to make one other point here, in that this is done by age, but I think age is sort of a proxy for what level of the organization you're in. So it wasn't saying that, but it's kind of hard to say like, well, what about junior people? But for the most part, 22 to 25-year-olds are going to be in those early stage things, and 35 and above are going to be a little more experienced. But the interesting thing to me is sort of that, and this is what we talk to big companies about all the time, this idea, when you start restructuring, it's not about layoffs. It's about looking at your job descriptions now. What's out there? Who are you recruiting? And can these, in the next 6 to 12 months, be done by AI? Now, we know that it can be done by AI now, but will they have the kind of internal political will to do that? So it's not about laying people off. It's about who are you hiring? And I think that's what this study really starts to show in a really interesting way.
Yeah, so something that I think is so fascinating about this is basically, like you mentioned, it's basically the role level. We saw, I think, I was looking at your post, by the way, and I love some of the metrics that you put on this. So if people are looking for a quick call out way to see basically some of the key numbers and highlights, definitely go follow Connor on LinkedIn. And by the way, if you want someone to help you really help make behavioral shifts inside of your organization with data just like this, you definitely need to check out Connor's AI Mindset course. He does consulting and has helped companies with tens of thousands of employees have signed up for this course to basically really help move the needle in their organization and help them adopt AI. So not just look at new tools, but actually drive behavioral change, because this is one of the big problems we're seeing with adoption. And I think this is maybe one of the big key highlights I'm seeing inside of this study here is basically the adoption. And it makes a lot of sense though with the metrics, right? So we're looking at software developers, customer service, marketing, and accounting. So I'll give you the quick metrics off of these four kind of areas. Customer service, young workers dropped 15 points. Older workers up 8 points. Software, this is kind of like the most shocking. This is the headline a lot
Right.
of people talk about. Down 20 points for young workers, older workers up 6 points. Marketing, young is down 12, older is up 7, and accounting, young is down 10 and older is up 5. So we basically see the same trend in all of these different industries, and it is the younger entry level workers are dropping the hiring for these, but the older workers more experienced, you could say, maybe instead of older workers. And the concept that I'm thinking here is basically like you have to think of how an organization works, and that is that you have people that are masters in their domain. They're really great at marketing or customer service, accounting, or software, and they don't want to do a lot of the menial tasks. They don't want to do a lot of the small things. So like you kind of think about it like an like apprenticeship. You bring in junior people who come in, they work underneath of them. Maybe they'll be given like some of the smaller tasks or the repetitive tasks or the, for one reason or another, the person trying to architect basically doesn't want to do them. And those people will go do the task. They eventually learn how all of those tasks work, and they will move their way up the ladder, climb the corporate ladder. That's basically how corporate America is structured. But what happens when all of a sudden we put this massively innovation, this massive innovation of technology into the workforce that basically automates the smaller things? And all of a sudden,
Right.
We have the thing where it's like you're augmenting workers, but if you're augmenting like a manager and they're like, okay, fine, I'm not even working with these junior people. I don't want to explain to them how to do it. My AI can just do
Yeah.
that. Like, forget them. Like, I think this is basically where we've come. So all of a sudden it's like, well, if you're experienced, we need to hire more experienced people, because more experienced people are going to be able to use these AI tools and basically get more done. And so I think it's a cost saving thing from a lot of organizations. And I don't think it's a problem that can't be fixed, but I definitely think it is something that we should be paying attention to. Like, down 20 points on software developers, junior software developers sounds crazy. I personally have seen this. When we started AI Box 2.5 years ago, it was before like basically AI was good enough to do a lot of our coding. It was all done by hand from scratch, and we were we're a very lean team. I remember when we raised our first $100,000 angel check, and we did not have the the finances to hire any sort of expensive software developers. So we went and hired 2 junior developers that were helping our CTO. They were doing all the small, like just the UI changes on the website, a whole bunch of small stuff, and saving our CTO a ton of time. And then we moved to where we're at today, where our CTO can use Claude Code and basically one-shot all of the design, basically looking at the context of our website, can one-shot complete new pages, complete new features, can write things that would take a team 4 months. He can do it in like 4 days. And so it's like very quickly becoming the only people we will ever hire AI Box. We can't hire junior people. We will hire people at his level, at our CTO's level, who are master architects. We'll give them an area of domain, and they'll be able to use Claude Code to do insane things. But like, we would never hire anyone below the level, because basically once you get to a high enough level, you understand how to architect the entire system, and you can just automate things. I think this problem actually is going to get more exacerbated in the future, but fascinating data. Absolutely fascinating.
So you made a couple of points there that I want to think about, because one of them I hadn't really thought about before. Yeah, and you're again sort of in a little bit of a unique position with AI Box, which if you haven't tried it out. It's this tool where you can test different models against each other. It's super, super helpful, and you're not paying for a ton of them. So definitely check that out, folks. But the thing that I want to ask Jaeden, as the entrepreneur here, and I know Jaeden hires a ton of entry level people. Jaeden, you and I have talked about this behind the scenes a ton, which is you have this great sort of sense of like who you should hire and how you should hire them, and you tend to hire like a lot of junior folks to do a lot of work, and I think you've been really good at that. And so it's especially interesting to hear you talking about that, because but your organization is different, right? Sort of like you're a sort of a smaller software company. You're not Salesforce, where you have to sort of like train people so that they can ride the corporate ladder up for the next 20 years. But the other thing that you said is so interesting to me, which I'd never thought about really, which is, so in this, well, let me say this, in this study, one of the kind of the extrapolations from the study is that the people that come in out of college have sort of like have that book learning, right? They kind of like have the theoretical, all that sort of stuff. Whereas the people obviously that you really want in your organization are the people with experience. Now, the only way to get those people with experience is to first hire the book learning people. So it's a good system, and AI is already starting to break it a little bit, not too dramatically, but a little bit, and will only exacerbate it. But Jaeden, the thing that you said that I'm kind of like want to catch on to here is, if you're talking about a manager hiring people that can do essentially the same kind of thing, it is way easier to interact with an AI than a person in a lot of ways, right? Like, there's no drama. That person's just going to be there. You can ask them to do something at 2:00 in the morning. You can keep correcting their work without. It's kind of hard to keep correcting a young person's work, right? To say, nope, wrong, try again, wrong, try again. It's just, it's an uncomfortable human relationship. And with AI, we have no problem, right? Like, nope, not that, not like, it just takes away all the very human stress. And the whole thing we talk about all the time, and the thing we talk about at AI Mindset when we're working with organizations, is that this is not about a tech. This is about working with a new kind of, as Mustafa Suleiman would say, digital species, a new sort of employee that has no ego and that you can either yell at or be super kind to or ask it to work at 2 o'clock in the morning. It only wants to make you happy, etc. Imagine the sort of change in workflow for a manager that all of a sudden doesn't have to deal with humans, the messiness of working with young
Mhm.
people. Now, I'm not advocating for that. I'm just sort of saying that this is all driven by human behavior, and that is human behavior. So I don't know. I thought that was a really interesting kind of comment on all this.
Yeah. So here's this, and I totally agree with you. And here's the solution that I think people should focus on. And also, like, whether you're in an organization hiring or whether you may be an entry level person yourself and you're like, great, terrible statistics, I'm screwed. What do I do? So, or perhaps you have like a child or, someone that would be in that boat. This is basically the solution to the problem. The solution to the problem is to basically niche down more now than ever and to become very, very good at one specific thing. An example is, just this summer we got a bunch of interns for AI Box, and I have a program where I work with universities and get interns to help us on like marketing and stuff. And in the past, last summer, I hired, I think, 12 interns were helping us do a whole bunch of stuff for marketing for AI Box. And I basically would just, anyone that would apply that seemed like, I don't know, somewhat competent, we'd bring them on. And some of them were incredible. Like we had some really incredible ones. Some of them were less. We'd have the ones that were, excelling, would help manage everyone else, whatever. So this is kind of the structure. This year, I have hired one intern
Oh,
and
wow.
I had the exact same amount of applications. And the reason is because I was just so much pickier because basically the AI is at such a higher level now. I can get almost the same amount of work done. We have a whole bunch of new AI tools that we're basically using to do everything. We can get it a lot more done. But if they're not at the highest competency in this very specific realm that we're working on, it's just not worth me having to spend my time and talk and train over and over again. So the person that we did hire, absolutely phenomenal. He's super high caliber. We give him the task. He understands basically this arena of marketing that we're in, and he can go and complete the whole thing. So I think basically it's not like you have to be the best at everything, but just going to university, just getting a degree and understanding the book smarts of something is not enough. You actually have to have applicable knowledge. So go and in whatever way you want to build a portfolio of marketing or accounting or whatever that looks like in your industry, build a portfolio of actual things that you have done and find one specific area in that you can dig deep in and be an expert at. And then when it comes to getting hired by a company, if they have that specific problem, they don't want to hire someone who's like, yeah, like I could generally kind of understand how that works. Let me figure it out.
Right.
No, they want to hire the person that's like, I deeply understand this issue you have. I use these 4 AI tools to absolutely crush it and do
That's
that
it.
faster than anyone
That's it.
else. And I will basically be able to solve your problem and get rid of your headache. That person will be hired every single
Well
time.
said.
So that's basically the
That's
solution.
it's so well said, because you hit on the two things. I think one is have a domain expertise in something, even if it's very, very narrow and everybody can get that. And secondly, and this is how I manage AI tools to get that done. And that's what I totally agree. That's what everybody wants to hear. Listen, first of all, just remember to go check out AIbox.ai when you have a second. Also, guys, rating and review. I know we always say it. I know it goes in one ear out the other. We would absolutely love it if you're willing. And otherwise, we will see you on the next episode.